You can create good mental health by following two very simple steps. You figure out what makes your life feel worth living, and you do that consistently. But you already knew that. So why then does it often feel like we don't have control over our mental health? And that's because as much as the answer is incredibly simple, it is by no means easy. So I've spent a good few months trying to figure out a system that literally anyone can use to revolutionize their mental health in the span of just a few months. Part 1. Figure out what makes life worth living. If there's one underlying message that I've gathered from studying all of the approaches in psychology, it's that human beings are not transparent to themselves. What I mean by that is we don't really know who we are, or what we truly want, or in our case of mental health, we don't really know what makes our life feel worth living. If I asked you the simple question of what makes you happy, you will probably be able to give me some kind of answer. Maybe it's your family and friends, or your hobbies, or relaxing on the weekend, or video games, or whatever. But how would you actually know that what you told me right then was true? Because human beings are constantly being influenced by forces that we can't control. Society has an agenda for you to buy things and pay taxes and be an obedient citizen. Your biology has an agenda for sexual gratification, social status, and satisfaction of those primal drives that may conflict with your actual goals. The point I'm trying to make is that figuring out what makes you want to be alive is actually pretty difficult. So I think we need a system to figure out the objective truth of what makes us feel good. So from the 1st of October of this year, 2023, to about mid-December, I tracked my mood every single day. I gave it a score out of 10, how I was feeling, and then I wrote a few notes about why I think the day went this way. This is then data, right, of what can actually tell me what makes my life feel worth living, objectively, because these have been the factors that made me feel a certain way. And you know what? It was so simple to do. You literally create a Google Doc with like 3 columns. One, you put the date. The second column, you put a score out of 10 for how you felt. And then a third column, a sentence or two of why the day went that way. And then after like 10 weeks, 2-3 months, whatever, right, you will have a list of days and a list of things that made you feel good in those days. That's the real truth when I ask you what makes you happy. I then went through my responses and carried out a psychological research technique known as thematic analysis. It sounds pretty complicated by name, but it's really not. I went through all the notes that I had made in my mood tracker and began to recognize some of the key themes that recurred in the things that I had said. For example, a few of my themes were poor performance, ambiguity, uncertainty and confusion, feeling lethargic and tired, social time, training and exercise, learning, good focus, etc., etc. Then I went through again and counted the number of times that each theme came up in my notes to really gain an understanding of what factors most commonly contributed to a good day and a bad day. Now, I'm going to go a little bit off topic here, but you have to trust me that this is going somewhere. At the end of the 1800s, there was an Italian economist known as Vilfredo Pareto, who figured out something very interesting about the way that life works. Through his life, Pareto observed that where he lived, 80% of the land was owned by 20% of the population, and in his own back garden, 80% of the fruit was bared by 20% of the plants. And as an economist, he proposed the theory known as the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule, that suggests that 80% of any outcome comes from 20% of the crucial causes. 80% of a company's revenue often comes from 20% of its customers. 80% of the crimes are often committed by 20% of the criminals. 80% of the points in team sports are often scored by 20% of the players. And in our case, looking at mental health, 80% of the way that we feel is often driven by 20% of the things that we think we should focus on. See, we're back on topic now. The car you drive, or exactly how much money you make, or the clothes that you wear might make you feel happy in the moment, but they aren't part of that crucial 20% of the things that make up 80% of how we feel. And if you follow this same simple mood tracking method over time, you will figure out what those 20% of crucial things are that make up 80% of how you feel. Knowledge is power, and right there, if you do that, you have figured out the things that actually make your life feel worth living. Part 2. Do it consistently. So now I've got the data of what actually makes my life feel worth living, I'm going to show you how I'm aiming to build my lifestyle around prioritizing these things. Because I'll be honest, right, the last few months of this year, of 2023, have been a little bit difficult for me psychologically. It's nothing major, nothing huge, just a couple of things in my personal life that meant I faced a few challenges with my mental health. So I think it's actually useful for you to see the proper plan that I'm putting in place to try and make these changes in my own life, so that when you've collected your own data over the next few months, you can do the same. We have the ingredients for good mental health. Now we just need to learn to cook. Cooking is all about technique and trial and error, and behavior change and developing new habits is very, very similar. In Ratatouille, Gusteau said, anyone can cook. And I'm saying that anyone can build and break habits. We can all learn how to stop and start new behaviors, just how we can all learn to make bolognese. Author James Clear is literally the Jesus of habit formation, and his book Atomic Habits is the Bible that outlines exactly how you can do this. The key takeaways I gained from his work is that to start a new habit, you have to make it easy, make it obvious, and make it rewarding. And to break a bad habit, you have to make it difficult and make it painful. Learning was one of the key themes I identified in my analysis, and reading is a habit that I've been pretty lacking on over the past few months. So to make it easy, I bought myself 3 new books that I genuinely wanted to read, so then motivating myself to read will be so much easier. Sure, it is great to have loads and loads of willpower, but if you can reduce the necessity for willpower and create a way to want to do a new habit, then surely that's the right thing to do. To make it obvious, I made sure I always had a book with me, always on the side of my desk or always in my bag when I went out. This means that when I had a spare bit of time, 5 to 10 minutes in between things, I would be more likely to get a book out rather than, say, scroll on my phone. And finally, to make it rewarding, I kept a kind of tracker on my reading of what I read and how long I spent reading, so I made it into a game where I could keep score. I also used the information that I learned while reading in conversations with friends, which I found incredibly satisfying. Also, over the past few months, I've been spending more time than I'd ideally like on Instagram Reels. Sure, it's nice to have a bit of entertainment when you're on the toilet, but it was getting in the way of my peace of mind and productivity, and it was something I wanted to reduce. So to make it difficult, I made the rule that I did not want to take my phone into the toilet, and as stupid as that sounds, it actually made a difference in how much time I was spending on Instagram. Secondly, to make it painful, if I did end up doom scrolling and wasting time I didn't want to, I made sure to take a moment to reground in the present and realize what I was doing and how it was making me feel. And the more I realized how much this habit was reducing my happiness, and the more vivid that image and feeling became, the angrier I got and the less likely I was in future to fall into that same trap. The overall idea of doing something consistently is about molding it into a part of your identity, which is something that James Clear also talks about in his book. When you have the ingredients of what actually makes your life feel worth living, you then have to become the person who prioritizes and does those things. And that doesn't sound easy because it isn't. But with time, which is something that we all have, it is doable. Part 3. Final thoughts. So that's the way I've tried to systemize the 2 simple steps of creating good mental health. But before you leave this video and enter your day, your week, your month, your year, I want to clear a few things up. Firstly, you need an understanding that this process is not easy, and that's why most people don't do it. But your mental health is arguably the most important thing to prioritize in your life, and that alone can be enough of a reason for you to continue despite the difficulty. And the second thing to understand is that a big part of changing your lifestyle is actually changing the person that you are. The part of you that does the things that make you feel worse has to die for a better version of you to live. Like a phoenix rising from the ashes, a new you will be born. But for that rebirth to happen, a phoenix has to first go up in flames. Behavior change will likely take longer than you expect, and that's why I put 6 to 12 months in the title of this video. And it won't be a linear progression. You will lose hope at points. You'll question why you're doing this, but as long as the overall trend is in the right direction, then you are on the correct path. I really hope this video has given you some level of value, and I wish you the very best of luck in this journey that we're all on to figure out what it means to be human. If you want to see a video that I worked pretty hard on that outlines a system for how I try and bring more positive thoughts and beliefs into my life, then you can watch this one here. But with that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.